Please don't make a scene, Hillary. That's just how it is. Now, go on. Your part here is already done. With a flawless smile plastered on her face, my mother spoke those words, and they shattered my entire world. Just a few hours earlier, I had been sitting in the passenger seat of the car my husband was driving, gazing out at the sun-drenched California coastline, unable to contain the excitement rising in my chest. In the back seat sat a bottle of vintage champagne I had prepared for my sister Ashley. Soon, the house on the hill overlooking the ocean came into view. The one my husband and I had bought a few years ago for $200,000 so we could enjoy our shared passion for surfing whenever we pleased. As we passed through the gate, the perfect scene I had spent weeks creating for the day's celebration spread out before us. It was Ashley's wedding day. There was no way I could refuse her tearful plea. It's my dream to have the ceremony at your beautiful beach house, Hillary. Between work shifts, I met with the catering company, selected flowers that would look stunning in the sea breeze, and had tents set up to welcome the guests. Just the previous night, I had been at the venue alone doing a final check until late. My heart swelled at the thought of a day filled with my sister and her fiancé exchanging vows and guests smiling with joy. But what awaited me at the entrance was something I never could have imagined. Passing under the white rose arch I had chosen myself, I spotted a familiar face at the reception table. My cousin Doris. She looked a little tense as she checked the names of arriving guests. Doris, working reception must be tough. Honestly, Ashley can be so pushy, making you do all this. When I greeted her with a smile, Doris jerked her head up. But her expression wasn't happy. It was unmistakably troubled. Her face was pale and she wouldn't meet my eyes. Hillary. Hey, it's been a while. Her voice was barely more than a whisper, squeezed out from somewhere deep inside. How have you been? So, where's our table? At the moment, I leaned forward to peek at the tablet in her hands. Doris quickly pulled it to her chest. Then, in a trembling voice that sounded like she was on the verge of tears, she whispered, I'm sorry, Hillary. Your name, it's not on the list. Right in front of me, Doris looked ready to cry. On the tablet screen was the guest list for today's wedding, dozens and dozens of names. Mine was nowhere to be found. That's impossible. This is my beach house. Sure, Ashley and her fiancé Steve helped out here and there, but it wouldn't be an exaggeration to say I did almost everything myself. So how could this be happening? Doris, this has to be a mistake. Check again, okay? Hillary, Hilary. My voice quivered more than I expected. Doris shook her head sadly, her eyes filling with tears. I checked over and over. With Ashley and with your mom. They kept saying this is the final list, and also... She trailed off, then leaned in close to my ear. They told me, even if you show up, under no circumstances should you be allowed in. I'm so sorry. Those words were like a spell that could stop time itself. My mind went blank, and the noise around me faded. The cheerful laughter of guests in sparkling dresses and tuxedos felt like it was echoing from behind thick glass. A cruel prank? An elaborate surprise? A misunderstanding? It had to be. I needed to ask Ashley directly. I was turning toward the venue when I saw her, my mother, standing in the middle of the lawn holding a champagne glass and chatting gracefully. I told my confused husband, wait here for a moment, gave the worried Doris a weak nod and walked straight toward my mother. She wore an elegant lavender dress, probably new for the day, and smiled radiantly. My father, though looking a little tense, stood proudly beside her as the father of the bride. When she noticed me approaching, my mother's expression tightened for the briefest moment, then immediately smoothed over into her usual perfect serene smile. Oh, Hillary, so you're here. Her voice carried no emotion at all. It was the tone you'd use to greet a neighbor who happened to pass by. A shockingly distant formality. What do you mean, you're here? Mom, what's going on? My name wasn't on the guest list. Doris was confused. This is some mistake, right? I fought to keep my voice steady. Deep inside, I was begging for her to say, yes, you're right. I'm sorry, it was an unbelievable mistake. And I'll go tell Doris right away. But the words that came out of my mother's mouth crushed my faint hope without mercy. She looked straight into my eyes, lowered her brows slightly as if troubled, and said, Please don't make a scene, Hillary. That's just how it is. Her flawless smile stayed fixed on her face. What do you mean? That's how it is. My voice had shrunk to a barely audible whisper. My heart felt like it had turned into a block of ice, cold, heavy. My father, desperate to avoid getting caught up in our frozen exchange, shifted his gaze toward the guests, pretending to scan the crowd. He was always like this, never once defying my mother when it mattered. His silence was just another quiet endorsement of her tyranny. Without sparing him a glance, my mother continued, unconcerned. You understand, don't you? Don't pretend you don't. Her voice sharpened. Listen, today is Ashley's big day. She's the one in the spotlight. With you here, you end up overshadowing her, don't you? It's always been that way. You always outshine her. Just this once. Let her have her moment. Ignoring the despair tightening around my chest, she went on, and besides, you provided the house and you helped prepare everything. Isn't that enough? I'm grateful. Now go on. Your part here is already done. She spoke to me like she would to a stubborn child who refused to behave. Grateful? I wasn't invited because I would outshine Ashley? I couldn't begin to understand the logic. My brain actively rejected it. I don't understand. You really are a difficult child. Stop making this more complicated than it needs to be. My mother's voice rang out, cold as ice. You'll ruin the party. Just leave. Your role here is already done. And with that, she turned her back to me and resumed her conversation with a nearby relative as if nothing had happened. My father glanced at me once, but there was no guilt in his eyes. Only resignation. I stood there, frozen. In the middle of my own beach house. In the center of the party I had poured my heart into preparing. Utterly, completely alone. Your part is done. Her words were lodged in my chest like a knife and refused to budge. What had my part even been? To provide the venue as the owner? To serve as a convenient source of labor for preparations? Like a sleepwalker, I turned on my heel. The glittering decorations, the beautifully arranged tables, the joyful laughter of the guests. All of it, which should have been the result of my hard work, now felt like a stage built solely to mock me. At the entrance, I saw my husband waiting, his face worried, blurred by the tears I hadn't even realized were welling in my eyes. Hillary, what happened? What did your mother— His voice sounded distant. I interrupted him, whispering just barely loud enough to be heard. Let's go home. He must have understood everything from my expression. Without asking anything more, he wrapped an arm around my shoulders and led me toward the car. When the door shut and the noise of the world was sealed outside, something inside me snapped. She said my part is done. She said I overshadow Ashley. That's what she told me. The feelings I had held down for so long burst out. This is our beach house. We did almost all the prep work. And I wasn't even invited. How could they do this to me? It's cruel. My husband stayed silent while listening to me. It's always been like this. When I paid off Ashley's $10,000 debt, not a word of thanks. When Dad messed up investing and I had to pay $30,000 in repairs, nothing. The more successful I became, the more they treated me like a convenient ATM. Always spoiling Ashley, leaving all the cleanup to me. I'm done. I've had enough. When I finally fell silent, my husband took my hand and gripped it firmly. Yeah, that's enough. His eyes were strong, unwavering. You kept quiet because you care about your family, but this isn't family. You've given them more than enough. His words took the fire in my chest and turned it into something colder. Steadier. A solid, unshakable resolve. I met his gaze and nodded quietly. We didn't need words anymore. Together we turned and looked back toward the wedding venue. I had prepared the perfect stage for them. And if you prepare a perfect stage, the finale must come at the most dramatic moment. So I waited. Waited for the exact instant when every guest had gathered, the music swelled, and the ceremony was just about to begin. I told my husband, just wait a little longer, stepped out of the car and slipped through the back entrance of the beach house so no one would notice. I went into the study and took from the safe the folder containing the deed, the proof that I was the owner of the property. Holding it tight, I returned to the car and waited in silence. From the car window, I watched the party. The music rose, and the guests all turned in one direction, applauding. It seemed Ashley and Steve, the stars of the day, had begun walking down the aisle. The ceremony was about to start. Now. I took a deep breath, pulled out my phone, and tapped 911. 911. What's your emergency? In a calm, low voice, a voice steadier than anything I had ever heard from myself, I replied, There's an incident. A large number of people have trespassed onto my property and are holding an unauthorized event. The address is... After finishing the call, I hugged the folder to my chest and waited quietly. 15 minutes later, when the flashing red and blue lights appeared at the end of the long driveway, I felt the corners of my lips lift in a faint smile I couldn't suppress. The police cars made their arrival known to everyone with blaring sirens that cut through Ashley and Steve's wedding vows. The sudden disruption sent the guests into an uproar. The music stopped, and even the officiant's blessing was swallowed by the wind. In the uneasy silence, as the sirens grew louder, people looked around at one another in confusion, hushed whispers spreading like ripples. Through that growing chaos, I walked toward the altar, the deed pressed to my chest. With each step, I felt the invisible chains that had bound me for years creak and finally snap apart. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm terribly sorry to cause a disturbance. My clear, steady voice rang through the venue, and every gaze turned toward me. Ashley, in her pure white wedding dress, stared at me as though I were a hallucination. Her expression shifted from shock to fury in an instant. My mother, seated in the front row, had turned deathly pale, her lips trembling uncontrollably. I am Hillary, the owner of this property and the house you are all standing on, and I have contacted the police to report trespassing. That was the spark. Hillary, how dare you do this? My mother was the first to snap out of it, screaming at the top of her lungs. The elegant smile she'd worn earlier had vanished, replaced by twisted rage. You ungrateful child, ruining Ashley's special day? How could you? Are you even family? Hillary, please stop. My father's pitiful plea was drowned out by Ashley's shrill voice. What are you doing here? Ashley, who should have been the radiant bride, pointed at me, her face contorted so violently it ruined her makeup. You came here just to ruin my wedding, didn't you? You always do this. You've always taken everything from me. You demon. Her screech echoed across the venue. Beside her, Steve grabbed her arm, looking utterly confused. Ashley, wait. What is going on? She's the owner? You told me this beach house belonged to your parents. Did you not get permission? Ashley fired back incoherently. She's my sister, just a spiteful sister. This is a mistake. She's just jealous. Jealous? Steve frowned, disbelief clouding his face. So you lied to me? You invited me, my parents, my relatives, onto property you did not have permission to use from the actual owner? I caught sight of Steve's parents sitting in the front row. Their faces were stone-like, filled with confusion and unmistakable contempt. At that moment, several police officers entered the venue, pushing through the panicked guests as they made their way to the altar. One officer took the deed from my hands, scanned it, and nodded firmly. Then he walked straight toward Ashley, who stood frozen in place. Are you the organizer of this event, Ashley? His calm, official tone echoed through the silent venue. Did you receive formal permission from the property owner, Hillary? Why are you asking that? She's my sister. She's family. Why would I need permission? Her desperate protest was cut down mercilessly by the officer's level voice. Even if you are family, entering private property and holding an event of this size without the owner's permission is unlawful. It constitutes trespassing. As the organizer, I must ask you to come with us to the station. Those words were the gong signaling the end of this absurd farce. No, let go of me. I'm the bride. Ashley thrashed, the hem of her white dress whipping wildly as she resisted. Steve, help me. Say something. But her fiancé, the man she desperately sought rescue from, only stared at her with eyes as cold as if he were looking at something filthy. Then he quietly stepped back. There was not a shred of love left in his gaze. Held by both arms, Ashley was dragged backward down the aisle she had just walked. The reverse bride before a stunned audience. The curious, disdainful, and pitying looks of the guests rained down on her like 1,000 arrows. I could even hear the faint sound of some guests recording the unprecedented scandal with their phones. Oh, my poor Ashley. My mother collapsed to the ground, sobbing. but not a single person around her offered sympathy. My father stood there ghost-like, shrinking under the sharp, accusatory stares coming from Steve's father. The wedding was canceled. The ceremony they had tried to hold in my beach house, while excluding me, ended as nothing more than a pathetic and ridiculous spectacle that exposed my family's disgrace in front of everyone. When the guests finally left and I stood alone among the ruins of the party, my mother approached, dragging my father behind her, her face twisted with rage. "Hillary, are you satisfied now? You've ruined Ashley's life." Tears glimmered in her eyes. Not tears of sorrow for her daughter, but tears of fury because the world hadn't gone the way she wanted. I answered in a cold, steady voice. "If you want to know whether I'm satisfied, the answer is no. I never wanted it to end this way. I just wanted to celebrate my sister's wedding as a family. But you are the ones who rejected that." My mother's mouth fell open, speechless. "Don't tell me you've forgotten everything I've done for this family. Ashley's debts, the house repairs after Dad's investment disaster. I paid for all of it, and still you never treated me like family. Just like a convenient wallet. This is the result." "What are you talking about? Children supporting their parents is normal." "Yes, maybe so. But I've never heard of parents who don't even invite that child to their wedding." I looked them both straight in the eye and said, "You've made your choice. I'm no longer your daughter nor Ashley's sister, just a stranger. So now, get out of my house." The words shattered my mother's pride completely. She opened her mouth to argue, but no words came out, only trembling lips filled with frustration. My father looked at me once, a defeated look in his eyes, then quietly pulled my mother away and left. That night, as I sat on the sofa staring blankly out the window, my phone suddenly vibrated loudly. The screen lit up with one name: Ashley. That meant she'd been released from the police station. I didn't pick up. I simply stared at the glowing screen, feeling nothing. The ringing went on, relentless, then stopped. The silence lasted only a moment before a barrage of message notifications sounded. The texts were filled with rage. "How dare you ruin my wedding? You devil! Are you trying to take all my happiness? I'll never forgive you. Go to hell." What surprised me was how utterly unmoved I felt reading them. Without opening any of the messages, I pulled up Ashley's contact and tapped, "Block this caller." The next morning, I sat on the living room sofa with my laptop open. My emotions, exhausted from everything that happened, had gone strangely calm, like the sea after a violent storm. I made coffee. My husband sat beside me, handing me a mug. At the sound of his gentle voice, I lifted my gaze from the computer screen. "Thank you." "Did you sleep at all?" I quietly nodded in response to the worried look in his eyes. "Yes, and I know what I need to do." I turned to him and said clearly, "The financial support I've been sending my parents every month, I'm ending it today." He listened without interrupting, then nodded firmly. "That's right. You've more than done your part." His affirmation gave me strength. I logged into my online banking account. The first thing I opened was the list of automatic monthly transfers. There it was, the parental support fund I had set up 8 years ago. Without hesitation, I moved the cursor and clicked Cancel Transfer. I let out a long, deep breath. The chains that had weighed heavily on my shoulders for so many years had finally been broken. "Hillary!" My husband, who had been quietly watching over me, leaned in with concern. "There's one more thing we need to check. About 4 years ago, didn't you become the co-signer on Ashley's credit card?" I frowned. I had completely forgotten. Back when Ashley had just started working at a boutique, she'd cried to me that she couldn't get a card without social credit, so I had agreed to be her guarantor for one of them. "I'll cancel it immediately. Whatever she spends from now on has nothing to do with me." "Good, just keep in mind. Legally, if she racks up charges before you complete the cancellation, the credit company might still contact you." "Yes, I know. If it happens, it happens." I no longer cared about Ashley's future at all. I logged into the credit card company's website and found the section titled Cancel Guarantor Agreement. After entering the necessary information and clicking confirm, the process was completed almost too easily. Then I went through every financial institution and insurance company I could think of. updating all my information so that none of my family could ever act on my behalf in any way. Now they wouldn't even be able to access my asset information. When everything was done, I closed my laptop. From here on, the real reality would hit them one by one. The monthly financial support would stop. Ashley's credit record would forever hold the scandal of being arrested as the bride at her own wedding, destroying her social credibility. They would have to survive entirely on their own strength, without the economic safety net I had always provided, as if it were nothing. Would they be able to do that? That weekend, I contacted the villa management company. By the end of the day, technicians had replaced every lock in the villa with electronic ones that required no physical keys. The new code was known only to my husband and me. And so, the ties between us, not only financial but physical, were completely severed. As expected, for the next month, my phone rang like a storm. For the first few days, there were hysterical, angry messages from my mother and emotional voicemails from my father appealing to my pity. When they realized I wasn't going to respond at all, their messages began changing, from anger to desperation in the face of reality they could no longer ignore. Then, exactly 1 month later, a tearful voice message arrived from Ashley. The sister who had never apologized to me, not even once, kept repeating, "I'm sorry," in a trembling voice. She must have finally reached a point where she couldn't make her monthly payments, but none of it reached my heart anymore. Without responding a single time, I added every one of their contacts to the block list. Their pleas, their anger, their regret. All of it became nothing more than meaningless noise muffled behind thick glass. 6 months have passed since then. My life became astonishingly peaceful. I still heard bits and pieces about my family from my cousin Doris from time to time. Ashley, due to the wedding debacle, had her engagement with Steve completely called off. Naturally, a bride being escorted out by the police in front of the wedding guests was an unprecedented scandal. But an even more shocking truth reached me a few weeks later. According to Doris, Steve's reason for breaking off the engagement wasn't just the wedding scandal. After I removed myself as guarantor, Ashley's credit card was suspended, and her finances collapsed instantly. As Steve looked into her debts, he finally discovered the truth. Ashley had been hiding it. She was addicted to gambling. Those words made me catch my breath in shock. Gambling addiction? It was the first I'd heard of it. I remembered the $10,000 debt I quietly paid for her years ago. She'd cried then too, saying she had overspent on shopping. I had believed her. I thought it was just immaturity. But now, instead of anger, a hollow sense of understanding washed over me. So that was it. The money I had given her, maybe none of it ever went to clothes or handbags. Maybe it all disappeared into gambling. Without my support, her true financial state had come to light. She is now struggling to repay loans from multiple consumer finance companies. Her social media accounts hadn't been updated since that day. My parents, too, had reached miserable ends. Without my support, their lives collapsed almost immediately. My mother, too proud to ask anyone for help, cut contact with everyone. My father, I heard, had started doing day labor jobs, and yet I felt nothing. No sympathy, no guilt, not even satisfaction. Just a calm understanding that this was the life they had chosen with their own decisions. Last weekend, I hosted a barbecue party at the villa with close friends. To Hillary's new beginning, my husband raised his glass high and everyone laughed and joined in. This warmth, this connection, was the family I should have been building all along. Not a family tied by blood, but by genuine heart. I lifted my glass toward the sky dyed by the setting sun, to my farewell to the past, into the true beginning of my own life. Cheers.